When to Leave. If you are looking for a different presentation, please make sure that you look at your agenda at the back of your program. It has a number of other topics and rooms that are in that right corner. So before I introduce our first speaker, I want to make a few announcements. First, the symposium is put on by the GCA Center for Adult Autism, which is a program at the Chattanooga Autism Center. GCA is a social and support group for autistic adults. They invite you to check out their webpage or join their Facebook page group. GCA will be co-hosting a cookout at Chester Frost Park Saturday from 1 to 4. You can find more information on their website or, again, their Facebook group. Please take advantage of the extra space in the room if you'd like to social distance from others outside of your family. And we encourage you to visit all of the exhibitors between talks. You can see the list of vendors in your symposium program. There's a coffee and water station that is available in the exhibitor room. And visit the silent auction out in the hallway. The auction concludes at 12:50 p.m. sharp, so the bids can go in before then. Lunch is going to be at 11:30 in the Tennessee room, and observations and opinions about relationships from an autistic adult presented by Tony Crombelich in room C at 2:20 p.m. has been canceled. Please choose from one of the other options in that period or utilize the open room C, which is where we are, for networking. Please silence your phones and refrain from texting or viewing your phones during presentations, as we've been told that this interferes and distracts our attendees. Also, please refrain from all side conversations during the presentation. Again, there have been feedback from attendees who find that the side conversations are also very distracting. So now, it is my pleasure and honor to introduce our first presenter, Sean Bogart. And Sean comes from, Sean Bogart is an autistic adult who advocates for others on the autism spectrum by helping out wherever and whenever he can. So let's welcome, please, Sean Bogart.
Thank you. Well, what I'm going to be talking about is know when to cleave, know when to leave. This is one of those things where that will help us when we have trouble with nonverbal cues. This guide is assuming that the other person does not communicate with you, so I've pretty much left that out of the presentation, but I let everybody know up front, just because a lot of times that's what happens. Like when it comes to ghosting, especially in the 21st century, people are more afraid to reject another person because they might react hostility, probably because we watch too much news, but you know, it happens. Once in a while you'll get people who will be direct with you, and then sometimes not so much, and then a lot of us on the spectrum need people to tell us right, you know, like right directly to us, to our face, in words, in plain whatever language is spoken. Doesn't have to be English. I always say English, but that's because what I speak. But if somebody speaks Spanish, any other language, that applies just as well. Okay, my disclaimer is the purpose is to help others. I'm not licensed in psychology or in therapy in any way. I'm an advocate. I don't have teaching credentials or credentials in any field of the like. This is based on either trial and error, what I've learned from others, and sometimes other presentations. You know, many factors have played through this over the years. I've been an advocate ever since I've had the symptoms, but I was officially diagnosed in 2014. But I always knew I had limited ability to understand nonverbal cues, even when I was a young adult. This was many years before I've even heard the term Asperger's. I mean, I've heard the term autism, but when you look back, you know, when I was a kid and a young adult, we're talking pre-21st century, which in order for somebody to be considered autistic, they had to be what we would say more severe. I mean, the numbers have gone up, but part of that reason is because the DSM changes each time. I was tested on the DSM-4, it did not allow it. I was tested on the DSM-5, it did allow it. DSM-5 done away with Asperger's and PDD-NOS, and DSM-4 still had those, and the person that tested me, that evaluated me, they, I don't remember what the exact words were, they were technical, and they did explain things thoroughly, but this was 11 years ago, and in a nutshell it was, well, you're not that bad or severe, lack of a better term. But because the DSM-5 has an umbrella of the Asperger's and PDD-NOS, and among other countless attributes, they did diagnose me with the DSM-5, and a lot of it is the limited ability of seeing nonverbal social cues. So definitely this won't be a one-size-fits-all. I mean, it's rarely that simple. I mean, based on the information given to me, it could appear that simple, but just by virtue of common sense and personal experience that may be similar, it's usually not. Even if you can say, well, if that person is this way, just break up with them. Well, logically, that may be the thing to do, but if you're emotionally attached, easier said than done. So, on with the show. Okay, the contents I'm going to have is why this is up for discussion and what it means, what it's not about, for who, when, and why does this apply, possible solutions to continue the relationship. And this relationship is very broad. It's relationship doesn't mean romantic partner. It means your relationship with friends, even acquaintances, people you see every day at work. I mean, anything, basically any steady interaction you have with other people on a consistent basis, with the varying degrees of feeling or otherwise. So then when it may be time to let go, I mean, you know, you don't want to say, well, first time they screw up, just drop them. I mean, unless it's something really severe, like they came after you and threatened your life or something out of the blue. But generally, you know, people deserve second chances. Then you have to decide if how many more you want to give them. Also, degrees of letting go. I mean, you can ghost somebody, or you can straight up say, I don't want anything to do with you ever again. Don't contact me, don't email me, no social media, no nothing. Don't want to hear from you. That's a more severe letdown, but there are times you have to do that. I did that once with somebody in 2004. They were an online person that I talked to for over a year, and we had romantic feelings for each other, but long story short, I had to let them go. Ironically, after starting this, after being approved and everything, I had to do this literally a week ago. But this was not a romantic partner. This was somebody that I had known for 3 years. I've met them in person a number of times. They run a social group like I do, except they're in an area 75 miles away from me, so they serve a different area than I do. And you know, and I've known them a while, and we were friends, but somehow things went awry no matter what I said, things were being misconstrued. So it was, I just mentioned this because it was ironic that I was talking about this very thing, and it was already approved, planned, and written when this had happened. And so I proved myself. I follow my own advice, but it's easier said than done. It wasn't by any means the first argument we've had. We've never had an argument once in person. It was 100% on private message. And the internet's been around for nearly 30 years now, as we know it. And I think anybody that's a consistent user of personal messaging or even on-board messaging, you know that it is things can be taken out of context easier than if you talk to them in person. Okay. Well, I've already gone over some of this, so I'll just kind of breeze through it. A lot of times they don't communicate effectively and openly, so therefore nonverbal signs. This could be a tool to help you out. It's not going to solve all your problems. It wouldn't mind. I mean, that would take a lot more to do that. So many of those, especially on the spectrum and even neurotypical, will retain relationships even at their own expense. In other words, the quality of the relationship and really the relationship itself has expired and turned into codependency of some sort. And many will give the benefit of the doubt that the other person has good intentions, whether they treat you good or bad. And then when somebody's trying to revive a relationship that's really expired to turn into codependency, it often makes the other person retract and maybe even feel threatened or stalked. I'll give for instance, I had a female friend in college, and we were platonic friends, never any more than that. And we knew each other because we had the same major, so we had a lot of the same classes together. We had outside contact, and somewhere between point A and point B, I lost her. I don't know what happened. So me being a good friend to her turned from being a good friend to considering me a stalker, which I found out 2 years after we ended our friendship. I found that out from a friend of mine because she told him, and I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. It's like, if you don't want me around, just say so, and I'm gone. But this was like over 20 years ago, so I wasn't that good at taking a clue back then. I was more of the person that would try to revive a dead horse. I wouldn't know it was dead, but it was. And then when one leaves or attempts, they're often manipulated by guilt, shame, gaslit, as if they're doing something wrong. For instance, with the person I told you about that I straight up said, do not contact me, I don't want to hear from you again, a week ago. They had guilted me, shamed me, and gaslit. I mean, all of that actually. But this was luckily in private messaging. I would have not carried on the conversations that we had in an open forum, just because of the nature of it. It wasn't too personal. It was just one of those things that what we were talking about. She had mentioned her family, and I'd given her some advice on it. So there's nothing too personal that I said, and she was obviously sharing with me. She has done that on an open forum in Facebook, but luckily this wasn't. So this is not about denouncing second or additional chances, not about demonizing the other person. Just because you're getting rid of them, like the person in 2004. I didn't think they were inherently bad. The reason I decided to disassociate is because we were on very different wavelengths. It took a while to figure that out, but like I said, for her, we had a romantic interest even though we've never met. But I didn't consider her my girlfriend. I did not love her because I had never met her. But I did have feelings for her as she did me. So I said we need to back off, a bit, and not flirt with each other, and this would not work. We're just different people, So I did everything I could to not demonize her. Said, look, this is not about you being a bad person. I had to say that repeatedly because, again, just because you want to get rid of them doesn't mean they're a bad person or you think they're a bad person. They don't have to be a bad person for you to get rid of them. It just means it's whatever the relationship is, it's not working. If it could be the same with a boss or coworker relationship. It may not be working there either. And you might have to change jobs. You never know, or if you work for a bigger company, change departments, stuff like that. Again, with this, it's not just romantic partners or close friends. It's all across the board. And then demonizing, creating a laundry list to weaponize against the other person, is covered by demonizing. So for who, anybody, coworker, boss to subordinate, doesn't mean if they're your superior, inferior, or your equal. Also applies regardless of race, gender, age, nationality, and all other distinctions, neurodiverse, neurotypical, all across the board. And the advice I'm giving you is the same advice I'd give to a neurotypical person, but a neurotypical person would more likely not benefit from a seminar like this one. Keep pointing over there, it's really over there. Okay, so when you ask is this best? A lot of times, basically it's when behavior changes from good to bad, or I should say positive and negative. It doesn't mean when it goes to bad, doesn't mean they're an evil person. Sometimes it does, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes the person was bad the whole time and they're just masking it, and then you're just finally seeing their true colors. And but either way, when it goes from good to bad, which leads to regression. For instance, my ex-wife, we were together 5 years, and in that time, she went from being empathetic, and she was quite good at being empathetic, to apathetic, which is the exact opposite. If anybody has any questions about any of the meanings of the words, go ahead and stop me, but I will be finished in time to ask questions. I'm sorry, to answer questions. I would ask you the question only if you ask me first. So communication seems to be more difficult for unknown reasons. This example, like the person I had to drop off from last Saturday, that was one of the big reasons. I would say one thing, and then the response would be inappropriate. And I don't mean like something vulgar, but what I mean is inappropriate. Like if you're saying the sky is blue, and then they argue back and say, no, the floor in my room is brown, not green. It's like, that's not what I said. I was talking about the sky, not your room. And responses came back repeatedly. It's like, where are you getting all this? And so, a lot of people on the spectrum are literal, and I was being as literal as I knew how, and I was being literal on purpose, just so there's less room for misunderstanding. Like if I say one thing and then they, like the sky is blue, and then they say, no, the floor in my room is brown. It's like, hey, I said the sky is blue. I mean, I literally meant the sky, and I literally meant color blue. And so there is no way I could think of that they could get the floor being brown. Just doesn't make any sense. Social distance increases for no apparent reason from the other person, such as canceling out on you, conversations cut shorter than usual, and the like. Like if there's a friend of yours you're hanging around with a lot, I think would be the best example. And then they start distancing themselves, or even though, I mean, if you've been friends with them for a year and then they start college and then they have to maintain their full-time job, then they're less available. That's one thing, that's a lifestyle change. Those things are understandable. But if you get to the point where they're less available, but their lifestyle is the same, they're working the same job, they're not working overtime, they have not taken on any additional activities, they just say they're not available, going back 5 years, there was somebody I just stopped communicating with. I didn't ghost them. I figured, well, if they don't communicate with them, I'll just leave it alone. They were doing the same thing, and it's like what the woman telling a guy, I'm washing my hair, or it's a bad hair day. That's a stereotype. I mean, I've never really heard that one, but I've heard it on the movies. In this case, it was bad Uber's day. I'm not kidding. Almost every time she canceled out, and majority of the times, this was not a mano-a-mano hangout. This was a meetup. And the meetup was with a handful of other people. So I wanted to put on that I was trying to help her out because I was in a similar boat. You know, people in her age group and my age group are all married and have their own lives. And I had only lived in the area for a few years. Let's hang out with some people, and then you'll meet other people that way, I'll meet other people that way. I figured, hey, that's a good relationship. And the nature of what she wanted in a like a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship and what I wanted were different things, and that was established right off the bat. And there was no feelings hurt because, that's the way it was the whole time. And so that was not really a good or bad. It's like, if you're flaking out all the time, then, they obviously want nothing to do with you or the group, or maybe it's really not you. Maybe they have some emotional problems that are outside of what they were ever willing to share with you. So the why, it may need to end because of toxicity, irreconcilable differences, or changes over time where people are drifting apart. Basically what I explained previously, drifting apart, all that falls into it. And for the sake of all involved, people need happiness, peace, tranquility in their life. That goes for both ends. Then there's a point where that's no longer possible when it once was. And you always have to wonder why was it possible 6 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago, or whatever, 5 years ago, and it's not possible anymore. Well, you may not get that answer. I mean, there's a lot of times I never got that answer, and sometimes if you don't understand it, you have to accept it. But it always helps why, because then if you know why, then you can either change your behavior, or you would know earlier to distance yourself, because that's maybe what they have wanted for a longer time than you were aware of. So, possible solutions to continue the relationship. Excuse me. Of course, verbal communication, I think, is always best. Straight up verbal, direct. And if can't do face-to-face, which is always best, you can either do phone or social media. I would say social media is the least favorable, just because it's a lot easier to misinterpret things on social media. And phone is far better, because at least you can hear the tone on their voice, and that could give you a better understanding. But in person is better, but that's not always possible. So change the behavior, maybe due to their feelings and actions toward you changing, like I mentioned before. If so, ask what the issue is so it can be addressed. And of course, you don't know if it is you or not. If they claim it has to do with you, then you have to decide if this is legitimate or time to call baloney. BS is a better word for it. That's what's usually used, but I don't cuss, especially in presentations. So, you can, so then they claim it has to do with you, then really, whether you want to claim baloney offhand or just claim it in your head, just hear what they have to say. A lot of times I will claim baloney in my head, and I want to hear what they have to say just so I can hear it. It may be amusing, or I may have been wrong. I may have been like, well, maybe it wasn't baloney because this is what they really meant. Could have been something different. And then they claim it has nothing to do with you, but something else, like if a friend or relative is going through a divorce or death in the family, many things could be wrong, or somebody that they're close to that you don't know or never heard of is going through something major, or has even been eliminated, so to speak, meaning death. You just never know. And hopefully that's not the case, but it could be. You never know. And you can ask if there's anything you can do to help. And sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. Sometimes, if they say, yeah, I just need a listening ear. Like if somebody tells me about their problems, unless I know otherwise, I will give them advice, because I always use the golden rule. I want to be treated a certain way, I will treat you a certain way. And the platinum rule is okay, golden rule is do unto others as you want done unto yourself. The platinum rule is do unto others as they want done unto them. Well, a lot of times you don't know the platinum rule because you don't know the other person, or you're still trying to get to know them. After 3 years with the person I dropped off from last Saturday, they finally told me they just wanted a listening ear. They didn't want advice, but they when they said they did not want said advice, I thought they just didn't want that particular advice and then move on from that. If I would have known since minute one that they really just needed a listening ear, because sometimes that's all they need, then that changes the equation. So I changed my behavior and gave her advice no further, but she was so worked up that it was just done. I asked the question, so if I understand right, this is what I literally did. I said I'll respond to more later, but just so I understand for now, so when you tell me about a problem with a family friend or whoever, you don't want advice, you just want a listening ear. And she said yes, and then went into this explanation that she did not want me to say anything, she didn't want any advice about this or that, and complained and criticized my advice. And it's like, I already heard that. You could have let it go, because if you say you just want a listening ear, it's like, okay, I get it. Unless it goes against my moral beliefs, I will use the platinum rule like I would have done onto her if we would have continued friendship. So when it may be time to let go. When other person is consistently distant for reasons I explained. When civil, reasonable communication is dialogue is no longer understood or possible, like the person from last Saturday. And then they say one thing that suggests they find you favorable, but behavior shows the exact opposite. There was somebody in one of my meetup groups, this was from another person from 2017, they would say one thing and then did the opposite. And it's like, if you're telling me one thing, don't get mad because I'm doing it. If you want me to go to Birmingham and you really wanted me to go to Nashville, don't tell me to go to Birmingham, just tell me to go to Nashville. If you tell me to go to Birmingham, I'm going to go there, and then if I get there and then I figure out I need to go to Nashville, well, you needed to tell me that in the first place, save me a trip to Birmingham to begin with, just go straight to Nashville. You know, that certainly wasn't what happened in this case, but that's the easiest and least personal example I can think of meaning the opposite of what you're saying. And it's amazing how often this happens, and as I get older, it seems like the problem is getting worse, and I don't think it's me, I think it's just the changing times. Now, in a coworker or a boss to subordinate relationship, this gets a little more tricky, because in that situation, anything negative against you is a liability, whether it's true or not. It's a liability whether it means it could put your job on the line, or even if it's just mildly tainting relationships with your coworkers. In this case, you may not just lose the person or persons, but may have to look for other employment if the employer is unable or unwilling to find a resolution to keep both parties properly distanced. Again, same boss, subordinate relationship, or vice versa. You could be the boss and they could be the subordinate, and this problem could still persist, because just because you're the boss doesn't mean you could say, George Jetson, you're fired. You know, there's depending on the corporation or agency, I should say, because, you know, like if you work for the city, you don't work for a corporation. So you work for an agency, an employer. If you're the boss, a lot of times you can't just let them go. You have to go through several steps to do it. And when it comes to hearsay, it's harder to prove. But with cameras nowadays and more voice recording and video recording can be on smartphones as well as that camera over there, then it's easier to prove. But you have to time it, and then hopefully it is not illegal in your community to do so without them knowing. Because if they know you're being recorded, then obviously they're going to act different than otherwise if they're doing something they know they shouldn't be. So, you know, like with regression, kindness previously perceived as positive becomes an annoyance or in some way negative, and they become meaner and more aggressive when you become kinder or more gentler when you're trying to appease the situation. I mean, a lot of times the other person knows what you're doing, and they, you know, like the person last Saturday, maybe she wanted that drama. It appears that way. I could be wrong deep down inside, maybe she doesn't, but as I backed off, and then after realizing she didn't want advice, I stopped giving it to her, and I just was a listening ear, and it was too late. But I abided by those wishes, and her aggression did not lessen. It was steady or worse, even as I got more gentler and I was handling with her with kid gloves. It just wasn't working anymore. So in that case, you're only given into their power of their hungry layer, meaning they may be narcissistic, they may be power hungry, like, you know, this person will do what I say. They'll if I ask them to do something, they'll do it. So I'm going to take advantage of that, and no matter what they do, I'm going to keep up the drama just so I can keep the flames going. Then, of course, with a person like that, it's certainly best to let them go, in my opinion. There are various degrees you can part ways. I mean, there's not just one. You don't have to say, get out of my life, I never want to see or talk to you again. You know, not that easy, and it doesn't always have to be that way. So you can go light, like no contact from your end, but you'll accept contact from their end. Like if they call you, you can return their call, or if they want to talk socially, you can. You know, it's really up to you. But you don't have enough interest in them to have anything to do with them yourself. They initiate, but you have some degree of care for them to where you're willing and okay with listening to them or talking to them if they initiate contact. And then, or, similar, just tell them that you need space. That would probably go mostly with romantic relationships, like, hey, I don't want to let you go, I just need to slow down. And that doesn't necessarily mean, go with somebody else. It just means, you might feel crowded, and then you'll say, hey, I just need more space. You might feel restricted even if they're not trying to run your life. They might feel a restriction for whatever reason, because if they had no relationship and then you came into their life, it's having a romantic relationship is a lifestyle change. You don't have to move in with them. It could just be something serious, even if it's long distance. You could say that if you're feeling a bit crunched for whatever reason, and people in the spectrum are, in a lot of cases, have more sensory issues and are maybe more likely to do so. And then you can maybe step it up a little bit and do the ghosting. I find ghosting the least favorable among all these, because I think ghosting, to be honest, is cowardly. I think you need to be more upfront with them, whether you need to talk to them face to face, directly to them, without gossiping to others, or even if you tell them on social media or email, telling them is better than not telling them. But I mean, you'll eventually get the hint, but still, with ghosting, it's a very cowardly way out. Also, the more harsh one would be inform them that you want absolutely nothing to do from them here and out, like I did a week ago. Cut them off. You tell them directly, and block them if necessary. If it's a relationship and things have gone, like a romantic relationship, if things have gone much further than that, then you might need a restraining order. You might have to move hundreds of miles away. I mean, there's just all kinds of things, but hopefully tell them you want nothing to do with them. They're not going to react violently. Okay, now accepting the closure. Even though you're telling somebody you want nothing to do with them, there are some things you might miss. You might miss who they once were, or who you thought they were, and you're like, what happened? I miss this person. But the thing is if they change the behavior, that person does not exist anymore. Like when I got married, and then when I got divorced, the person I fell in love with was gone. It's like that spirit left the body and another soul came in. And I don't mean it was a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, but it was a gradual change over time. And it's like, well, just because a person simply changes, I don't think is a reason for divorce. In fact, I didn't even initiate the divorce. But the point of that is that the person was not who I thought she was, but that was a disappointment, and that was the closure. Even if I initiated the divorce, I would still have a grieving process for the person I once knew that is now gone. Even if their shell of a body is still there, but you can't force that other person out if that other person doesn't exist, or the other person does not want to let that out. Move on and resume your life, rather than trying to revive a futile relationship that could cost you friends, mental health, and even if your professional life, employment, career. Being a dead horse is going to take a lot out of you, whether you're neurotypical or neurodiverse. When it takes a lot out of you, you're going to have less to give for your family relationships, for your friend relationships, for your job, sleep deprivation, countless things that can affect you. In a nutshell, it's draining. It's going to drain you, and that's why it's better for you to have closure, even if that's not what you want. All around, it's better for you. The best to cut losses early, but it's never too late. Even if you look back and say, well, I should, you're 5 years into a relationship and you're thinking I should have cut this off at 6 months or 9 months when I saw the flags, but hey, at least you cut it off at 5 years. It could be worse. You could keep it going longer. But you don't want to cut them off so early that you're not giving the other person at least a reasonable second chance. That would be a little too early, but if you see a pattern that just doesn't stop, and most of the time they don't want it to, then you have to cut your losses, and then the regression that they've done going from a good person to, or favorable to not so favorable, however you want to put it, that's on them, not you. It's rarely going to be something you did. It's most likely going to be on their end. And of course, I would say to anybody, you deserve better than that. If they're the ones treating you right now, they're treating you like garbage, and you're just not a full human to them anymore, like it seemed to be at one time. Well, that's no way to be, and that's no way to live, and definitely move on from that. Okay. Well, it's 9:42, so I can entertain questions for about 10 to 15 minutes. I know I've rattled on, and hopefully I wasn't moving too fast. I brought my camera just so other people can see it. It will, nobody's faces in this room will show unless you walk right in front of it.
I think it's hard when the person doesn't change, but they kick you out of their life, and you still see them as the same person.
Absolutely.
I've had that happen before.
Yeah, the person from last Saturday, I definitely saw the change, and that was probably the least difficult one for me to make, and that I can think of. Now, there's been other times where, if that was the case, you're still seeing them the same person, like the woman I mentioned I went to college with over 20 years ago. Something changed somewhere from point A to point B, and I narrowed it down to like a 3-week span, but couldn't figure out, because we never had an argument. I don't know what happened between point A and point B, but something did. I don't know, and I'll never know. It's just that their perception of me changed. And of course I accepted it, but that was a tough one, just because I thought that person was still in there somewhere. But being much younger and less experienced socially, I thought they were still in there, and they were just repressing it when that person, well, quite frankly, might have been gone. So it's definitely hard either way.
Yes, do you have any advice for how to lead a relationship, as you say, when like they're part of a group that also includes relationships you want to keep? Because that can get really tricky.
It can. So with that, I guess it depends on the degree of what the issue is. If it was a close romantic relationship or a close friendship, it could be really bad, especially if the reasons for it was them trying to say you had done something, and then you may have, and you didn't know it was offensive to them, or they're just BSing you and just want nothing to do with you anymore. If it's on the more severe end, like again the relationship or anything I just said, it's probably best to leave that group. However, if you have some close friends still there, nothing says you can't keep in touch with them, and then just keep the drama out, and I mean, you can tell them why you left if you feel it's right. but it's not something you want to, it's not a dialogue you want to keep going continually. It's like, hey, this, you know, we had a disagreement. It's just too awkward to continue attending the group. But there's a few people I want to keep in touch with. That's what I would do based on what you told me if I was in your shoes.
Okay,
If it's a breakup, I've noticed that like the friends that were with the one partner tend to stay with that partner. Like I went through a breakup recently and my ex like started becoming friends with my friends, but like I've noticed that I don't like I'm not aware of him being in contact with them. Like they seem to have stayed on, I guess, quote my side of the fence. Not that I would be mad if they were friends with him still, but it seems like people do seem to like pick sides, especially with romantic relationships.
So in this case, was it the friend, your friends, meaning the friends you had before the relationship?
Yeah.
So they were taking your side and his friends were taking his side kind of thing?
No. So he didn't have a lot of friends, and he came with me to like meet up groups and stuff.
Oh, and he had friends with them. He had friends with your
He became
friends.
friends with them, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he became friends with them
Yeah.
as they were friends with you.
Yeah.
And then you broke up, and then they hear what they hear of the story, and then your friends will either pick your side or their side.
Apparently, yeah. I mean, they in the meetup groups that we've had, like there's another member who's recently gone through a breakup, and like my friends have made it very clear that if her ex is uncomfortable, she is not welcome. Which is just all very complicated and messy.
Oh, it absolutely is. It sounds like in that case both people should probably leave the group.
Yeah.
But if only one is there, that's fine.
Yeah.
Um,
I'd be okay if my ex came. I don't think he's gonna be comfortable and gonna come. But if he came, I'd be okay with it. Like I don't.
I think it really depends on the person, because I had a breakup with someone and their friend didn't, I talked to their friend and their friend didn't even know anything had happened, so, which is a good situation in a way, you know?
Yeah, but I don't know. Yeah. There you go.
Well, it's definitely about the perception. Like you're perceiving the breakup. Okay, the breakup. You know, there's of course emotions involved.
Right.
You know, it's not usually good. But it sounds like you're not jaded enough to where if you see them, you know, that's okay.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I don't think he's a bad person. We just kind of outgrew each other. So, you know, it's not like he's awful, I'm good. It's just like we were going on two different paths that weren't compatible.
Well, there's two reasons I can think of offhand that he would not be coming to the group. And I could be wrong on either of them. There could be a third reason.
Okay.
What I would think in that case is he may feel that whatever the reason is for the breakup, that he would feel too awkward.
Yeah.
Or he would feel like if he came to the group that he would that everybody would look onto him unfavorably.
Ostracized.
Yeah.
Yeah, he might feel ostracized, even if he's not. He might feel that based on a few things he heard, or maybe just going on his feelings.
Yeah.
Those are possibilities.
Definitely.
And I wonder if you could take some time, like, lay low. Like, I think sometimes it's, like, so emotional at
Oh,
the
yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And then if you, like, take some time, like, lay low and, like, let it calm down,
Yeah,
then maybe you
for sure.
could go back. But
I mean, I never really left because they were my
Right.
friends first, so like I wasn't really gone. I'm hoping he'll come back, but I don't know.
yeah, I know, it's just hard, I think, right in the beginning. It's like
Yeah.
maybe as time passes,
Yeah,
like,
well,
you can
We're like 2 months out, so we'll see.
negotiate every
Yeah,
other
we'll see.
week.
We'll see what happens.
Can't forget their
We'll see.
Yeah,
Yeah, take turns.
Negotiate a fight.
Have custody of the friends.
Right. I think it's true. It's like telling your friends what's okay. Because sometimes your friends are like fiercely loyal, and then
Yeah.
like they're bad and you're
Aaron and
good.
Dan are. Aaron is very loyal.
Yes,
He's like,
he is very
he's like,
loyal.
oh, I have your. And I'm like, chill. It's
Yes.
okay.
So it's like telling your friends it's okay.
Yeah.
It's an amicable. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand, but I guess my friends being like, hey, my boyfriend's sort of like this, and all of a sudden, like, one of my friends is like, you need me to throw hands for you.
So that's awesome.
Like, I'm just like, that was kind of like the fluffy bunny wolf.
You have the white sweater.
Yes, so as a parent, a neurotypical parent, an autistic adult child, and, you know, I come from a slightly different generation where, you know, meetup groups were actually seeing people in person. You know,
Oh, it is
they
in
were not-
person. It is.
Yeah.
And not, obviously not social media,
Yeah.
as much, it's not like I'm not aware and in tune and I know what's going on, but as a parent, where, or what advice might you offer where I stay away from this mix of going on of leaving, staying, and making the decision, or where, or do I jump in, mama bear? When does mama bear,
Well,
I'm gonna fight for my child?
I think,
Not with kids.
Right.
Don't do that thing.
well, Mama Bear should jump in if we're talking about physical safety.
Right.
You don't want physical harm done unto them, or worse, death, of course. You wouldn't want that.
That would be worse.
Now, if you're talking something that's
Well, see,
just,
she's struggling, and it's like,
Yeah.
as a parent, you're dying to help, but, we're different, and we operate differently, and I don't want to, prohibit what she needs to do as an adult, and,
That's so hard.
well, you definitely want to stay for support. Again, unless it's something that you're concerned about harm, the physical harm, then I would say make sure you know that you're going to be there for them no matter what. But you might want to back off. Now, if you back off, then that means if they need anything, they will come to you. And most likely, if you back off far enough, they will come to you. And you will be there for them, I expect.
sure hope so.
So that would, yeah, you don't want to be a helicopter parent.
I found, because I have that dynamic with my dad, where he's like watching, he'll tell me all of his little nuggets of wisdom after like a breakup, for example, but like I typically have found that I come around to like the quote like that, like the best decision, it just takes me longer than it would someone older. So sometimes it's just a matter of like waiting for them to figure it out on their own, I guess. Yeah.
I think like asking where they're at and
Oh, that's a good idea.
saying, like, I know this doesn't seem, you don't seem happy if you're telling them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it sounds like you're trying to be helpful, but I think when you ask, like, how is this for you, or how do you feel, or what do you notice things are going
Yeah.
well, or are not?
Like when I walk into
Kind
the
of
room,
opens the door.
when I walk into the room, go, and then I look at my dad, and he's like, "Do you want to talk?" Like, that's always like really good. Yeah.
All right, Mr. Adidas.
Me?
Yes, Adidas, sure.
What about the role of the third party? The entity that neither may know or both may know?
So like when you're like referring to her breakup, you're talking about the third party being her friends or his friends.
Maybe someone
minister,
stuck in the middle.
Share friend, psychologist,
Share friend.
Well, I guess
and you're all the above.
well, yeah, I guess that's you would have to make the judgment based on what you know of both people. Like if you hear an accusation and you're like, well, I've known this person for many years, and that's just is not like them.
Mm-hmm.
So in that case, although it doesn't mean it is or is not true, because people, especially manipulative people, will put on an awesome act, and some people won't. But if they're putting on an act, they could be the most wonderful person in front of you and all their friends, but behind closed doors, if they have a live-in romantic partner or marriage, whatever, then they could be a completely different person. And the best thing you can do is to go, go on what you know of both people the best you can. 'Cause it's really hard to take sides. Even if you know them, even if you've known them both all your life, it's hard to take sides. In fact, that may make it worse if you know both of them all your life.
Mm-hmm.
The accusation's always worse than that. Even if it's true, it's always worded worse than it actually is. It's a stretch, typically.
That's true.
Even though it's true.
It definitely is, especially if you've watched any news the last few years. I mean, the meaning of so many words have changed. It's like it sounds far worse than it actually is because the meaning has been changed and watered down to almost nothing.
Like somebody attacks somebody, but you find out they actually verbally, which is still not good, but it's different context. Whether if you physically assault someone versus verbally.
Yeah, there are people. There are people. I'm not sure what side of the fence or of what fence they're on, but there are some who want to make staring an offense because it's very triggering and it makes them feel insecure. They want it to be like as if you verbally or even physically assaulted them. And of course, that would be hard to prove, but with cameras on transportation and in buildings these days, it can be proven a lot easier, but that's really a small thing. Ma'am in the dark top. Oh no, you. Yeah, you rose your hand a minute ago. Did you still have a question?
Yeah.
Comment?
What if like a past friendship, like they apologize for something, but then they just like start to like repeat their actions again?
Well, that's that does happen a lot, and in that case, if they've apologized, that means there is a level of acknowledgement that they did something wrong, as far as you're concerned, and they're obviously wanting to make amends for some reason. If they repeat the behavior, then let them know it, because if they're concerned enough to know what they did and they apologize for it, then they're reciprocating that they care enough about you to apologize. And then then you reciprocate that by telling them, you know what you apologize for, you're doing it again, can you please stop? Something of that nature.
We're autistic, so it's hard sometimes to, even when you know, it's hard sometimes to break a habit. Or,
Oh, yeah.
Oh my god, yeah.
like chewing, I have a friend who only one, it was an acquaintance, who doesn't like the sound I make when I chew my food. And so like, I don't remember that whenever I hang out, whenever I'm around her. So she has to tell me each time and I feel really bad.
Well, I've heard of this, and even my own wife has said this to me back when I was still married, and I mean it's not like I was chewing with my mouth open and making a lot of noise like chewing gum where you can pop it and all that. It was nothing like that. I was just having a meal, and I didn't know it until the marriage was almost over. It was like the last few months before we started the separation process. She told me she didn't like the way I chewed. I'm like, are you serious? And
Yeah.
and she says, well, don't feel bad. The way my dad chews drives my mom crazy too. So she was, making sure she, wasn't, hey, it's not that big of a deal, is what I gathered out of that. But still, with the problems in life, aren't the bigger fish to fry, because as far as I'm concerned, she's frying a minnow, not Moby Dick.
Okay, let us thank Sean.
Now, I'll see you in a few minutes, Mr. Rogers. I'll be in his neighborhood shortly. You're welcome. Thank you. It's taken a long time to learn how to do that, and I'm not always that good.
Longer than you thought.
I should work so well.
Oh, yeah.
Folks that are on the spectrum and folks that are not,
Well, if somebody's always been apathetic, then that's their nature.
You grow in that.
That's right.
When you grow in when everything just
Sure. Absolutely. And hopefully it changes.
hopefully, you gotta make a change, you gotta take the initiative.
That's right.
That's hard to do for a lot of people.
Very true.
And sorry, but like it seemed like I was being rude when I was like doodling. I draw I draw to help me stay focused. Like I'm always like daydreaming, so I use like the drawing like to help me stay focused, like stuff that's happening outside my mind.
Well, I didn't even notice you were doodling. I was looking on the room. Maybe a couple people were looking down, and I might have assumed that somebody was looking at their phone, but it wasn't consistent.
Also, like the reason I was kind of confused when you like called me is like instead of like hearing like my name, I heard like dark shirt man. I was like, huh?
Oh yeah. I saw you were looking down at that time doodling, and then I didn't know your name, so that's why I said that. And then when you turned around, that's why I pointed at you. It's like, of course, if I was that good to remember names or be able to read it that far, that'd be awesome. But that'd be an ideal, perfect world.
I was like, I have an inspiration for your shirt, and so I just started doing this.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I was in Birmingham, Alabama on Monday. I live an hour and a half away from there, but there was a tow truck that had these colors all over it. Didn't say autism on it, didn't say anything like that, but it just had all the colors. I thought it was really cool, but I didn't know who the company was, so I couldn't look them up and get a picture. And since I was driving, unless I could go like this to my head and take a picture, I wasn't getting it.
Technology's not quite there.
Yeah, I just like to draw.
Oh, nice.
How are you?
Well, if I had penmanship like that, oh my gosh.
Like all the ones I did just while during this.
Well, I envy your ability to draw your penmanship. For me, typing is our advanced technology is a gift because you can't read it.
I always beg teacher to let me type because I'm like slow at writing, so I'm just like, please let me type.